Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our meeting tonight. Before our meeting officially begins, we'll have an invocation which I will offer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. God, our Creator, we offer this humble invocation as a journey through this time, this year, so special to all of us and to our city. We come to you with a song of thanks in our hearts, a song of redemption, a song of hope, a song of renewal. We pray for joy in our hearts, hope in our God, love to forgive, and peace upon the earth. We ask for the salvation of all of our family members and friends, and we pray for your blessings for all people. May we be the bread for the hungry, love for the unlovable, healing for the sick, protection for our children, and wisdom for our youth. We pray for the forgiveness of sinners and that you fill our hearts with your love and power this season. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Meyer, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Poole?
Present.
Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mr. Brady? Ms. Twine?
Here.
Mr. Waddington?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Meinzer?
Here.
Commissioners, would someone care to make a motion to excuse Mr. Brady?
So move.
Second.
And a motion and second discussion. Without objection, the motion be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our meeting of December 13, 2021. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
move that we accept the minutes of the December 13th meeting and dispense with the formal reading.
Second.
Been a motion and second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. This is the time in our meeting when we welcome audience participation on the agenda items. If anyone has any comments, questions about the various items that are up for votes tonight, please step to the microphone, give us your name, address, and share with us any thoughts or questions that you have. Not seeing anyone move to the podium, we have a proclamation. And Mary and Joey Subpoena, would you please step forward? Thank you both for being here. Tonight, the Commission has the distinct pleasure of delivering both a proclamation and a set of keys to both Joey and Mary Subpoena. I want to acknowledge their family who are also in the chambers tonight. Through Sandusky Artisans, these two people have worked tirelessly in our community in an effort to provide a path for those suffering from alcohol and drug addiction. The difference that their efforts have made can never be accurately measured. No one can really keep score of the lives that have been changed by their work. Not just the lives of the addict or the alcoholic or those with mental health issues, but in the lives of all the families who are impacted by your work. You've allowed countless people to again become productive members of society. You have returned fathers, mothers, brothers, and sisters back to their families and to society to live meaningful lives. Thank you for believing that every person is capable of change, that every person deserves dignity and respect, and that every life is worth saving. In a world where addiction can seem to be a relentless foe, thank you for being the warriors of hope. Sandusky and its residents could never really express our gratitude. This is a small token of our city's gratitude, though. Folks, if you want to know what the hands of God look like, take a look at their hands. These are examples you'll find in Mary and Joey Subpoena. It is my honor to present to both of you the following proclamation that Mr. Brady will sign as soon as he's out of the COVID quarantine, and this key to the city.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. It's a great city.
Oh, we get sworn in. This is the occasion after the election where instead of getting sworn at for one day, we get sworn in. So I think we're going to go in alphabetical order. And it was supposed to be Mr. Brady, but I think you. No, not you. You. No? Who's first in this?
P's after M.
Yeah,
He's after
Jolly.
him, so you'll go
Very
first.
So just the two of us. Okay, that's all we have left. So
Yeah.
no. My son is here, and he's going to swear me in. Folks, this is my son, Nolan Murray, and he
Hey, no.
is a notary and a newest member of our law firm, so I think you and I are going to have to share this. Yeah.
Raise your right hand. I, Dennis E. Murray Jr.,
I, Dennis E. Murray Jr.,
do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend
do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States and the state of Ohio,
the Constitution of the United States and the state of Ohio,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Sandusky,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Sandusky,
that I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially discharge the duties of my office
that I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially discharge the duties of my office
as city commissioner and not be influenced by any consideration except that of the merits and fitness in the appointment and discharge of employees.
as a city commissioner and not be influenced by any consideration except that of the merit and fitness in the appointment or discharge of employees.
That I am currently qualified to hold the office and will maintain all the qualifications throughout my term in office in compliance with Section 4, Section 6, and Section 43 of the city charter.
That I am currently qualified to hold the office and will maintain all the qualifications throughout my term in office in compliance with Section 4, Section 6, and Section 40 of the city charter, 43 of the city charter.
So help me God.
So help me God. You know. Thank you, folks. Mr. Jolly,
Yes,
I think we have an honored guest here to swear you in.
yes, the esteemed Judge Tom.
You can read off of that one if you want. Judge reads that. Oh, you have a copy there, Judge? Yeah. Okay, all right.
I got a copy. Yeah, all set.
I, Stephen R. Pajali,
I, Stephen R. Pajali,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Ohio,
and the state of Ohio,
and the charter and ordinances
and the charter and the ordinances
of the city of Sandusky.
of the city of Sandusky.
That I will honestly,
That I will honestly,
faithfully, and impartially
faithfully, and impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of my office
as
as a city commissioner,
a city commissioner,
and not be influenced
and not be influenced
by any consideration
by any consideration
except that of merit and fitness
except that of merit and fitness
in the appointment
in the appointment
or discharge of my employees.
or discharge of my employees.
That I am currently qualified
That I am currently qualified
to hold the office
to hold the office
and will maintain all of the qualifications
and will maintain all of the qualifications
throughout my term in office
throughout my term in office
in compliance with Section 4, 6, and 43
in compliance with Section 4, 6, and 43
of the city charter.
of the city charter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Hey, Judge. I'm loath to correct the judge, but could you sign this before you?
No, actually, that's what I was looking.
Okay.
I knew who had the original.
Yes, give it to Miss Meyer.
Thank you, Judge.
Sure. All right, you're judge.
Judge.
Thanks, Judge.
All right, guys.
All right,
Judge.
Thanks for being here, Judge. Next on our agenda, Marcus Harris is our Diversity and Economic Opportunity Manager, and he is here to provide us with a DEI Strategic Plan roadmap and overview for the city of Sandusky. Mr. Harris, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Murray and commissioners, for allowing me the opportunity to share with you a high-level overview of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan for the city of Sandusky. DEI work is both an organizational and a personal journey, and every journey requires a guide. Right. For our DEI strategic plan, we'll be working in conjunction with Lisa Bottoms, the founder of Bottom Line Consulting Group in Cleveland, Ohio. Ms. Bottoms is a leader in the human services industry with over 30 years of experience in government, nonprofit management, strategic planning, program development, and DEI and project management. The common understanding in academic and business circles is that having a diverse staff and leadership teams offers improved decision-making, more creative solutions to complex problems, and better overall performance. And one of the major goals of the DEI Strategic Plan is to help the city as an employer position ourselves to be the employer of choice in Northeast Ohio by harnessing the power and the benefits of having a diverse workforce, reflective of the population we serve. Our objectives are to gather data, review policies and procedures, establish DEI goals, define the metrics used to measure those goals, and share our findings. The outcomes from this work will be an increase in community trust in local government and that we have an equitable allocation of public resources to the entire city. And increase employee satisfaction, engagement, and reduce staff turnover. This work will help inform the city's overall strategic plan and create a framework for city employees to continuously improve in our delivery of service to the citizens of Sandusky. Having a DEI strategic plan will accelerate our journey to achieve equity in our pipeline for employment with the city. Once hired, we want to ensure all employees have the tools to succeed in their jobs from onboarding through their probationary periods and beyond. We want to help senior leaders, managers, and supervisors understand and model inclusive behaviors to ensure our work sites are welcoming spaces to retain the employees that we hire. Some of you have heard the phrase representation matters, and Sandusky's employees and citizens need to see themselves reflected in all levels of city government. And I want to be clear, diversity isn't just a race issue, all right? Age, gender, physical ability, sexual orientation, geographic location, education level, military experience are all examples of social identities that DEI work impacts. And we want to celebrate our city's diverse workforce and so that our employees feel comfortable bringing their whole selves to work. DEI work is primary and not peripheral work, and we all have a shared responsibility in bringing this program to life. We will employ a four-phased approach to our DEI work. This is a holistic assessment of the city as an employer and service provider. We want our work to be data-driven, so conducting employee interviews, focus groups, electronic surveys will be critical to our success. We will assess the organizational infrastructure, service offerings, evaluate programs to see if they are reaching our target populations, look at the effectiveness of our marketing and communications for staffing, procurement, and funding. We want to ask the tough questions and not shy away from the answers. Transparency is crucial into building trust, and we want to create a public report of our findings and going forward, report out on metrics and the goals as we accomplish them. Phase one, which we just completed, was about planning, level setting, scheduling, establishing a strong team for our work going forward. Invitations to join our DEI action team were sent out to the entire city staff and members of the commission. And our DEI action team consists of employees from community development, building, code compliance, customer accounting, HR, and public works. And I'd also like to thank Commissioner Blake Harris for representing the city commission on the team as well. Phase two, which we are currently in, is about interviewing and meeting with key stakeholders, sending out our employee survey, and conducting departmental focus groups. We will review current program outreach efforts, staffing demographic data, procurement efforts, and current equity tools in use. And as I said before, this is all about data, data, data. You have to have data to make data-informed decisions, and we want to go off facts, not story. Phase 3 is about the DEI team crafting strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threat, or SWOT analysis, a DEI impact analysis, conduct external research into best practices from some of the leading private and public sector organizations who have done DEI work before us, so we don't waste our time reinventing the wheel. Our team will form recommendations on prioritization of key areas of focus to share with senior leadership. And then phase 4 will produce a variety of recommendations for the city, including mission, vision, value statements based on those that we craft for our group. I was very surprised when I came to the city that we did not have these in use. And these statements form the foundation for all activities within an organization. Vision statement is an organization's overarching aspirations of what we hope to achieve in our work. Our mission statement is a specific description of what we need to do each day to achieve that vision. It defines how the city of Sandusky will be different from other municipalities and how we do things. And a value statement defines what we believe in and how we expect all employees to behave with each other, with citizens, suppliers, and other stakeholders. As leaders, we cannot expect to hold employees accountable, or we can't expect our employees to understand where we want to be and how we want to get there if we do not have something tangible to point to as a North Star. So without declaring those values the city as an employer believes in, we can't hold ourselves accountable for how we do business. So this work will not only inform our current work as the DEI action team, but our current workforce and set the benchmark for excellence for generations to come. Sandusky has made tremendous progress over the last decade, in my opinion. And we must set in stone the mission, vision, and values that were used to get us here, and to make sure that we can have this set in stone to help guide us as we move forward into the future. And lastly, the DEI action team will create immediate, midterm, and long-term goals informed from the baseline metrics we determine are key areas of focus. We'll provide city leadership with recommendations to address areas of opportunity through possible legislation and deliver the commission a presentation of the DEI Strategic Plan results. And so I appreciate the City Commission giving me an opportunity to present to you today. Open communication is the foundation in any relationship. And I want to make sure that you and the citizens of Sandusky have an awareness of the work that we're doing. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have to the best of my ability. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I just want to thank Marcus and the work that he's doing with the city. As mentioned, I think some things we make an assumptions that are already happening, but they're not. But thank you for investing in your hometown and investing in the city of Sandusky and helping us move forward. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Other comments? Mr. Fowler.
Marcus, I would just like to say I think you gave a nice presentation. And will you be coming at different intervals to give us process on how this plan's going?
Yes, I definitely would be willing to do that as we go along in this process. Any updates or pertinent information. All you guys and ladies are key stakeholders in this, right? And so we want to make sure that you are informed and up to date to anything that is needed. So anytime that you would like to either meet individually or would like me to present to you as a group, I'm willing to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Warrington.
Just a little confused. Now, this is a presentation for a consultant?
No, so what this is the work that we'll be doing. We are working with a consultant, Lisa Bottoms, from Bottom Line Consulting, and helping craft the DEI strategic plan. But this is the core work for our team that we're doing. So this is a roadmap and an outline of what is already in progress in which we're doing right now.
So you're like a department head, you're writing a business plan, and we're not paying any contractual work to anybody else?
That is okay. Oh, we do have a contract with her, but it was at I would characterize it as a very low rate in which I was able to negotiate with her because we have the pieces in place already, right? You have I Exist. It's not like we're coming to this with a blank slate. And we had some other proposals out there that were in high and ridiculous amounts. And I didn't think that we needed that. We just needed someone to help guide us on this journey.
Mr. Chairman, and obviously it wasn't $10,000.
Less than that.
Okay, I mean, because it would have came before us. That's why I'm asking about the cost of
Exactly.
this. That's what I just, okay, thank you.
That's business acumen. I know the rules. It's business acumen.
Yeah, just checking.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, kind of just to piggyback off of what Naomi has said, you know, it's just a pleasure, man, just to have you back. It says a lot, you know, for you to kind of, you know, I guess for lack of a better term, uproot your family and come back to, you know, where it all began for you. And hopefully, you know, in the near future, we can see that trend continue. So thank you.
Mr. Harris, let me just say, I want to say something to the folks back home and to some of the doubters of the importance of the work that you're doing. I agree with everything you said 100%. And I've lived through it on a bank board where we find that being more inclusive thinkers, we call it diversity of thought, but diversity of thought starts with diversity of experience. And private industry has embraced what you're doing because it works. It makes companies more successful. It is exactly what you said. It makes the employees better committed to the organization and its mission. It makes the organization more responsive to the people it's serving, in this case, the public, and it produces better results. And we're a government, and for goodness sakes, it's important for us to embrace these things. So I just wanted to offer that perspective that private industry knows that this works, and it's right that we're doing it in Sandusky. And thank you for, as Mr. Harris said, thank you for making a bet on us, taking a risk on us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioners.
Good job, Marcus. Good job.
All right, next we have the proposed 2022 budget, and our Finance Director, Michelle Reeder, has a presentation for us. She's here someplace. She must be, oh, there you are.
It's hiding.
Good evening. So with the 2022 budget, we have to do a public hearing. So that's what we're starting off with tonight, is a public hearing, but taking the opportunity to show a few slides presenting the 2022 budget. So as a reminder, the 2022 budget cannot be passed until the first meeting in January. So on tonight's agenda, you will see the full 2022 budget. That's just first reading. We will have a second reading again in January. On the agenda also is the temporary budget for tonight, which is what will need to be passed on emergency, because that will be the temporary budget that will go into effect on January 1st. So we have a budget to be operating on once we roll into the new calendar year. The budget that we're going to show is just the operation and maintenance budget, what we consider the O&M budget. There will also be a capital budget that will come to you in 2022 with all the capital projects that we intend to do in 2022. This first slide shows the 2022 proposed budget. It's broken down by fund. There's many funds in our budget. We have to do fund accounting. It's not fun accounting, but it's fund accounting. Many different funds make up our budget. We generally talk a lot about the general fund. You'll see that first line, the general fund, the far right column, the 2022 budget is $25,040,000. So we'll have further slides that break down where all those funds are going. As we go through here, you'll see like we have street funds, transit funds, the park and rec, we have pension funds. On this next slide, we have our capital funds, water and sewer funds, health insurance, and endowments. The far right column shows the grand total of all budgeted funds to be $81,804,185. So that is what we consider our total budget for the year, but as I said, a lot of times we're just talking about general fund when we're talking about certain items and where the money's coming from. The general fund is the most popular term you're going to hear. With a total budget of the $81 million, this slide shows where the employee breakdown will be. This shows in 2020 where the employee breakdown was, and at the bottom of that 2020 column, you'll see that we had 253 full-time employees budgeted at the start of 2020 before the pandemic happened. As we budgeted for 2021, we budgeted 240 full-time employees in that budget. Now with the budget we're presenting for 2022, we are at 245 full-time employees. Highlighted there, you'll see a couple items in blue, and those are the increases in the budget for 2022 compared to 2021. The fire department, we're going to bring back the fire chief. That's in the budget for 2022. Just got sworn in a couple of minutes ago, so that's exciting. You'll see changes in the recreation department. I know Mr. Whoopser has some comments probably about that position in the future if we're looking to bring on recreation facility in the future. The code department looks to bring on somebody. Community development has a possibility of bringing on another employee, and then the facilities and grounds department would like to bring on another employee to help maintain the city facilities. So that would bring our grand total to 245 full-time employees in this budget. As we talked, the full budget is just over $81 million in 2022. This slide shows the dark blue at the bottom is the amount of that $81 million that is spent on personnel. So this is wages and fringe benefits and health insurance. In 2022, the personnel budget is $26.3 million of that $81 million, so it's about 32% of our budget. So there's a lot of other investments going on in the city, not just into the personnel. That just shows the investments that we make to the community. As promised, this is a slide showing the expenditures in our general fund. The 2022 budget for just the general fund is the $25,040,321. On that far right, it shows the percentage of the budget of the general fund that goes to each department. The police department has 3 different divisions within the police department. They have the police department, which is just the officers. They have their records, which is their administration at the police department, and then they also have reserve officers. If you combined all 3 of those departments, you'd be looking at about a 20% of the general fund budget goes to the police department. The fire department, you'll see that they equal another 20% of the general fund budget. As you go down, we have about 6% of the general fund budget goes to the horticultural division, which is our greenhouses and facilities and grounds maintenance. And then the largest other expenditure coming out of the general fund would be our administrative support department, which is basically all of our transfers. That's why that's going to be a large number at $7.4 million. Anytime we transfer money from the general fund to another fund, it goes through that administrative support department. Of those $25 million that we have in expenditures in the general fund, this slide shows where the revenue is coming from. So we have $25.3 million worth of expected revenue in 2022, so we will obviously be able to take care of the expenditures as we have budgeted. This slide shows that 45% of our revenue in the general fund is coming from our income tax collection, and we have about 25% that's going to be coming from admissions tax in 2022. In 2022, we're looking we're at 6.275 in collection. So it's $6,275,000 in collections and admissions tax in 2022. You can see all the smaller pieces of the pie there make up the rest of the budget, but they're only making up 30% of the total revenue in the general fund. All those miscellaneous departments, even the lodging tax, property taxes, are a small piece of the pie. Most of our revenue is going to come from an income tax and admissions tax when we're looking at the general fund. And this is the last slide. I just wanted to show our long-term debt and where we're at. On the left-hand side, you'll see the 2019 long-term debt schedule. These are the payments that we were making out of our bond retirement fund for the long-term debt obligations that we have. The grand total was $1,625,020 in 2019. You can see in 2022, our long-term debt, we're down to $693,180. So a drastic reduction in our long-term debt in just 3 short years. So we've been able to do a lot of good things over the last couple of years and put the money to good use. So we're paying down debt, and we're in a good position going forward. So the Finance Committee has looked at this budget. They've already recommended it for approval. And as I stated, we'll need to pass that temporary budget as an emergency tonight, and that is just a quarter of what you see here is budgeted for the temporary budget to get us through the first quarter of the year in case the full 2022 budget does not pass in that first couple months. I'm happy to answer any questions. This full budget will go back for second reading to everyone in January, but I'm available anytime if anybody wants to sit down and review the numbers further.
Thank you, Ms. Reeder. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
just want to say thanks. I attended that budget meeting, and if anything you do as a commissioner, and I've talked to Mr. Bajali about this, attend them to keep up to speed. I guess my second question or thought that I had, the federal funds coming in the second half year, do we have an idea? Is that hitting like February, March, or do we know?
Through Commission President to Commissioner Waddington, we believe it's supposed to hit in May.
May?
We're still waiting for final ruling on the eligible uses of those funds, but we're going to have a plan hopefully in 2022 for the uses of those
And I
funds.
guess the follow-up, that number won't change in what we were presented. We're going to receive that.
Correct.
Good.
Additional questions or comments, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Poole.
would you go back a slide, just to be sure? Estimated revenue is $25 million for 2022. Where's the increase coming from past years, say from 2019, which is what you used before? Where do you expect us to get more money from?
Through Commission President to Commissioner Poole, one of the increases is admissions tax because we have the new partnership with Cedar Point. So it's about a $2 million increase in admissions tax alone.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr.
Poole.
Chairman, yeah, I am interested in dealing with the personnel. You're adding personnel. Is there, can we get an organization chart? I have no idea what these people are going to do, what department they're going to be in, what their contribution is. How do we get a feel for why you're adding people, what they're going to do? Can we get something for that before we do a final vote on this document?
Sure.
I think each department should have somewhat reason for why we're hiring in one department, not others, based on what they're contributing.
I apologize, Mr. Poole. I did not mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. I'm easy.
Ms. Wobser.
Through the Commission President to Commissioner Poole, and actually if I could ask Director Reeder to go back to the slide with the personnel for the last 3 years. So if you look at the numbers from the beginning of the year in 20, when we went into the year at 253, and then obviously we had a lot of attrition during the pandemic and fell quite below that 240 number. So we've really just been replacing positions in the budget. And in fact, this budget only takes us back to 245. So we're actually just still in the process of replacing the positions. But if you look closely at those numbers, you'll see that we held most firm in areas like police and fire and public works type positions because they're providing the most critical basic services. So those are already back and budgeted at the levels that they were pre-pandemic. If you see where those 5 positions where we're down, or 8 positions that were down, if you look at, for example, community development, I believe we had 12 full-time employees pre-pandemic. We're only budgeting to be at 8, so half of the reduction in staff has been in that department. And we're gonna try to stay at a lower level than the 253 and be strategic about adding positions. There's actually only one new position that's not a replacement position in the 2022 budget, and that's the addition of a Parks and Recreation Director that will help to begin the process of planning for a new recreation center and oversee that. And we've been working with Public Works about which horticultural divisions will also fall under the direction of that. And we're happy to talk about that. We are in the process and hope to bring to the commission early next year an update of 145, which is a codified ordinances that speaks to the structure of the departments, and we hope to be able to bring an organizational chart for the commission to consider at that time. So we'll be happy to bring that to you. But again, we're still at the point, other than that Parks and Recreation position, which we think is going to be critical with the new revenue coming from the Cedar Point partnership for the rec center. We're not adding any new positions. We're just replacing positions that existed pre-pandemic in 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Wobser.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole.
so clear something up. I understand that we're budgeting by numbers of people we used to have. Justification for hiring this department, adding to that department based on the fact that they existed at some point in time. The 253 number, we never justified one way or another what they were doing. We haven't had, we need an we approved them they did some work, but we've never yet, on any of these budgets, identified what the departments do, what the impact is on, we didn't justify the increase, we just said it was a good idea. And what I'm trying to find out is what the folks do and how it impacts service. And so to plan in the future, do we add or not? It's like, does this service need more help? Do I need more firefighters? Do I need, and it's based on what they do, not on just some number that we used to have this many. There was a time we had 52 police officers. Let's just pick another year and say, okay, we're going to get back up to that number. I hope I know this seems clear, but.
Your point is well taken,
Yeah.
Poole. I understand your point, and I think it's a valid point. And I know I've talked with Mr. Wobser. He does plan some changes to the org chart. I don't know when he plans to roll that out. I would say that we all have a pretty good idea of what most departments do, but to the extent that there are questions, I know Mr. Wobser would make himself available to provide a narrative. I don't know that we have a document that, lays all that out in a formal way, and I don't know that I would ask the staff to prepare that because it's kind of a fluid thing in terms of what we're addressing in a given year, but I'd encourage to sit down with Mr. Wobser to get any clarifications you have in terms of why he's bringing back certain folks and whether or not we don't need more in other areas. I'm sure he'd love to have an army of 300,
Yeah.
but we can't afford that.
Yeah, and I just suggest that an organization chart by department that identifies what people do, who's assigned, it's documented. I can't see that being difficult for staff to do. That doesn't seem like much work. They should be able to tell you who works in their department, what they do, and you should be able to identify whether
No question.
So, and that's what we don't have and have not had for the last 5 years. We have an organization chart of the overall organization of departments. What I've asked for and can't put my hands on is a chart that says, this department has this many people, this is how it's laid out, and which makes it difficult when you're calling to get anything done, because you don't know what department does what. You call in. It would help if we had that, that's all.
Okay, understood. Mr. Wobser.
Through the Commission President, I was just going to say we do have an organizational chart, to Commission President Murray's point, that will be brought back to the Commission with the suggested updates to Section 145, so we'll be able to more formally have that conversation. And Commissioner Poole, this is the first I've heard of you asking for more detail than what's in the current organizational chart. We'll be happy to try to provide that when we bring that organizational chart to you guys, hopefully in January.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioners, additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question for Mr. Wobser. Relative to the timing of these hires, do you know when you were thinking about hiring this new staff?
Through the Commission President to Commissioner Pajali, the only new position to this, I believe, is the Parks and Recreation Director. Our goal is to advertise that in the first quarter of this year so they could get on board in time for the site planning and the program planning for the facility with the community. I believe that most other positions, because they're replacements, are budgeted to be filled in a timely manner upon the passage of the budget. I do know there were a few positions, and Director Reeder might be able to remind me which ones, which we timed out to later in the year because they're there to do certain things like replace retiring employees and that sort of thing. So I don't know if you want to speak to a few of those, but I know there's at least one or two that are half year or 1 quarter of the year replacements.
Correct. So the recreation position that's budgeted is budgeted beginning with an April 1st target start date. The same goes for the facilities and ground personnel. They're looking for a start date of September because we're looking to have a retirement late in the year next year.
And my reason for asking is no one knows what the future holds with the economy in 2022, and I would think we may want to move a little slowly and figure out where this economy is going. I mean, it may not, it may shoot up, but I'm not sure with the COVID and raising the interest rates and all those things.
So if I could just briefly,
that's why I asked about the timing, because I didn't know if that would derail your plans if we had to wait.
Absolutely. So if I could, through the Commission President, just to speak to that, this is both it's kind of unique because this is both a record-breaking budget for the city at a $25 million general fund, but it is also in many ways a conservative budget for the city due to the fact that we are only budgeting the new funds from Cedar Point to come in at approximately 50% of what we'd estimate for admissions, and probably even slightly lower than that for parking. And there's some good reasons for that, because the revenue or the ticket sales or pass sales that took place in 2021 for the 2022 season will be paid or were paid at the previous rate of 4% and 0% on parking. So we do need to be cautious, but it also because we're not budgeting many expenses for even that 50% of revenue from parking or admissions, we think we'll have some cushion this year, and that should allow us to adjust. And I did want to say just a few things generally to the budget before the commission votes, is just how excited I am and proud of this budget. And it's not necessarily the work that went into the budget this year, which Director Reeder did a phenomenal job on, but it is a number of circumstances, one of which is the new revenue. I believe that the year that I started as city manager in 2014, our general fund budget that year was maybe slightly over 15 million, somewhere between 15 and 16 million. And so we're passing a general fund budget this year that I believe is relatively conservative at 40% higher than that. That is new revenue that we have earned for this city that, to Director Reeder's point, is paying for staff. There has been an increase in staff, but is also putting a significant portion of dollars out into the street into the forms of new infrastructure, into the forms of incentivizing private development that stabilizes the tax base of the city. And I'm not aware of another city in the country that has had a 40% increase to their general fund over the last 7 years. So one is that we're very strong in revenue. Another slide that I'm very proud of is that we're nearly $1 million a year less each year annually in long-term debt service, yet we sit here in a brand new city hall. We sit here at the precipice of building a new justice center, of building a new recreation center, but that will not put us into the hole financially, but instead has been funded by things like the Cedar Point partnership. So we've dramatically expanded revenue, we've dramatically decreased debt service, and at the same time, as Commissioner Waddington mentioned, we're at a point where, and we can't take credit for this one, I would take credit for it if we could, but the federal stimulus dollars of $18 million, we're in the process now and hope to bring the City Commission early this year a plan for the deployment of those funds will allow us to further stabilize our revenue and to make investments into the city. So we've got a strong investment climate in the city right now, stronger than it's been in decades. Our revenue is stronger than it's been in decades. Our debt service is lower than it has been in decades. And so that being said, we do want to be conservative. We do need to monitor the national and global economy. We know that better than anybody because we got hit hard by it in the last few years with the pandemic. But I also think we should sit back and pause for a second and realize just how far this city has come in all of those other areas that I just mentioned, and that this budget is a reflection of years of all your hard work. So.
Mr. Wobser, additional questions or comments, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Meinzer.
After listen to Mr. Whipper's presentation on the grant screen, I hate to take it back to the minutia, but the finance committee and Director Reeder both vetted this out and are recommending approval of this budget. I have a question. I know, and it probably couldn't be answered by Chief D'Amico, but I know we had an employee that worked for fire that is budgeted by fire and is working in code enforcement. The 48 that I see, is that still budgeted for 22 out of fire department budget, or is that adding 2 more to the fire?
Through the commission president, and Director Reeder, please jump in or correct me if I don't have this quite right. My understanding is that that employee is set to retire toward the end of this year, and that we actually replaced a position in the fire department last year so that their staffing wasn't impacted by his partial role in the fire department, his partial role in code compliance. And my assumption is that we look to replace his position in the fire department when he retires later this year. Is that accurate?
He retires in 2022.
2022, sorry. So, okay, yeah.
So
later next year. I'm already on 2022 time. I apologize. Yeah.
So he looks to retire later next year. It's September, I believe, is when he looks to retire. We look to probably keep him in code enforcement, and then that position is going to be backfilled in the fire department.
Mr. Is there a reason that we're still budgeting fire for that position then?
He is technically still a firefighter. His primary duties, 60% of his time is spent as firefighter duties, and 40% over here in code is how we have him budgeted. So the primary duties are at fire department.
I'll probably have more questions about that, but not tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Commissioners, additional questions or comments? This is a public hearing. COVID has chased most of the public away, but if there's someone here that has a question on the 2022 budget, you're welcome to come to the podium and ask a question. Seeing no one come to the podium, I do want to, Mr. Poole, you had
Just
something else?
one last question. Maybe I don't understand. As we discussed the budget and you talked about the impact of the parking tax and the increased admissions tax included in justifying how we're paying for things. Maybe I misunderstood, but I was under the impression that through that memorandum of understanding, that money was spent on specific projects. And it sounds like as we make this presentation today, that we're double spending it into this budget. And I realize you gave us a broad generalized look here, and maybe the specifics of the dollars are baked into this somehow. But as I recall, that increase in revenue is already spent.
I can.
So how did you massage that from finance?
Mr. Poole, I'm going to answer part of that first, and I'll
Okay.
turn it over to Mr. Wobser. My recollection of the layout and the presentation of how the Cedar Point Partnership monies were going to be spent is some of them were dedicated to specific things, but some of them were more generally available for the city's needs. And so it was a balance.
There was $1.6 million, but it was identified for some specific things. It was infrastructure, I believe. I don't recall specifically, but no, there are categories that we said we were spending it on. And as we add employees and some of these other things, I just want to get a clarification of how you're making this work.
I think that's right. I
spending
think we're both saying the same thing. They're monies that are going into the general fund for various support purposes. But Mr. Wobser, this is your day job, not mine. I'll answer.
To the commission, President to Commissioner Poole, and you are both right, Michelle can dive in on this. We budgeted conservatively for those funds. We are still in the process of entering into an MOU with Cedar Point. We have our first full meeting with them in January. We'll talk about the specific projects by which we'll fund the priorities that are outlined in that agreement and those commitments. But we are treating 2023 as a year where, one, we're not going to collect the entirety of the revenue, and two, we are going to budget differently in this year than we would in future years, because we need to, so there are expenses that are tied to the projects that Mr. Poole outlined, but they're limited expenses this year, and Michelle has reflected for those expenditures in the budget. But what they will do is begin to tee up, so they'll all be set in the spirit, they'll be spent in the spirit of the agreement. And to your point, there is a portion, a little over 20% of that total overall revenue, which is less restricted and more for operations of the city for property maintenance, safety, and street maintenance. And so those funds give us some flexibility this year as well. I don't know if you want to add to that.
The only thing I would like to add is that you'll see the money comes in as revenue in the general fund. So you'll see the expenditure in the general fund, and that again is at 7900 department, which is our administrative support. That transfers the funds out of our general fund over to the capital fund. So the capital projects fund is where you'll see those expenses once they start coming in. So we'll see the revenue come in general fund, and then it gets expended. Those dollars go back over to the capital fund, and that's where you'll see the capital dollars being spent for the partnership agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Rader. Just two closing comments, and then we'll close the hearing. First, I want to say what a wonderful addition to the city team you've been. You have this, not only are you deeply knowledgeable about what you do, but you also have the ability to turn to Mr. Wobser and say, no, you can't do that.
Everyone does that.
And you also have the wonderful ability to turn to him and say, well, no, you can't do that, but we might be able to do this. And, you know, that kind of teamwork and collaboration is not unnoticed by this commission. And you make just a wonderful addition to the team, and I want to thank you for being part of Sandusky. The other thing I want to say, and it's to the point that Mr. Wobser was making, but maybe it's said a little bit more plainly. My father, who is now 82 and loves this city, grew up here and has just wonderful, wonderful memories of growing up here. has loved seeing the city come back. He didn't think it would come back the way he has. And he says to me, "What's next?" And I say, "Wait till you see. You ain't seen nothing yet." And that's where we're going next. So thank you for all of your contributions to that. And Mr. Wobser, I know that you're the master visionary, and thank you for doing what you do. So, all right, with that, we will close this hearing. And we have several communications from staff. I think that is next in order. If my iPad will wake up. Yes. Would someone care to make a motion to accept those communications from staff?
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Without objection, that will be here. Without objection, not hearing objection, the motion will be approved. Commissioners, we have no consent agenda tonight, so we just have our regular agenda items. And Ms. Meyer, if you would go ahead and present the first item, please.
Yes, Mr. President. It is requested an ordinance be passed adopting Amendment Number 5 to Ordinance Number 21-003 and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. We've discussed that quite a bit. So, Ms. Meyer, would you call the roll, please? This is on, I'm sorry, call the roll on the motion first, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. And Commissioners, I apologize if my footing is a little less than firm. I didn't find out until late this afternoon I was going to be running the meeting, so I hadn't thought all these things through. So, Ms. Meyer, would you present item number 2, please?
Yes. It is requested an ordinance be passed to make temporary appropriations for the months of January, February, and March 2022, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Would you call the roll on the ordinance, please? I'm
Yes.
sorry, pardon me. Would you call the roll on the motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Meinzer?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. And I want to clarify for the record, folks, because Mr. Heil will be all over me for this mistake that I made. When we voted on the 2022 budget, we were voting, I'll find my bearing yet. I apologize. Mr. Brady would give me more than an hour's notice. I would do better at this, but that's where we are right now. So, Ms. Meyer, would you present item number 3?
This is the first reading for item number 3. It is requested an ordinance be passed making general appropriations for the fiscal year 2022.
Commissioners, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the first reading.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Twine, it's interesting that you're making this motion on first reading because you won't be here for the second reading. That's very disappointing to me. Not that we don't welcome Mr. Bajali. Further discussion on the 2022 budget. So this is just a first reading, and we'll take it up again in our first meeting. Well, we'll take it up again in January, whether it's at the first meeting or a later meeting, I guess is to be determined. Unless there's further discussion, Commissioners, Ms. Myers, would you please poll the commissioners on the motion, or the ordinance, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
That passes on first reading. Item number 4, please.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and ratifying the emergency purchase of 2 2019 Mercury 350 outboard engines through the U.S. General Services Administration auctions website for the Sandusky Fire Department's fireboat and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Harris.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Myers, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 5, please, Ms. Myers.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to expend the necessary funds for the emergency purchase of 1 commercial-grade hot water heater from Keller Plumbing LLC of Sandusky, Ohio, for the Sandusky Fire Department, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Meinzer.
I noticed that Gunlock is a city business, and these are all local businesses that we bid it, but I know it was lower, but I think I read in Mr. D'Amico's going to be on board to answer this one, maybe. A Keller was chosen over Gunlock, and from the supporting documents, it looks like it might be because of detail of scope of work or best instead of lowest. Is that the case?
Mr. D'Amico, you're on. You got your first tough question, but from a friendly source, I'd say.
Through you, Commissioner President, Commissioner Meinzer, we chose to go with Keller based on maintenance staff's recommendations. Maintenance staff felt that their estimate had a lot more information and it was a lot clearer as to what they were replaced in their scope of work. And they felt like this would be the estimate was more qualified than the other one we received.
Unfortunately, Chief, you've got a pretty bad Wi-Fi connection there. I think I couldn't really hear what you said very well. Mr. Meinzer, were you able to interpret?
Oh. Can you hold a flashcard up or something?
Is there someone who's got a better Wi-Fi connection that's able to provide?
Obviously, I heard him say something scope of work detailed, so I think that's probably the reason.
Mr. Orzak.
Yeah, I believe what he said was the maintenance department believed that the scope of work and the explanation from this company was more detailed, and they have a better understanding of handling the replacement than the other bidders that were gave quotes on the project.
Chief, does that sound about right?
Basically, that's what I tried to say that you didn't hear.
Okay, thank you. I can see the IT folks in the back of the room are going to make sure that your Wi-Fi connection is improved. But thank you for the explanation. Anything further, Mr. Meinzer?
No, thank you. No.
Commissioners, anything else? Ms. Myers, you poll the commissioners on the motion, please.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 6, please.
It is requested an ordinance ratifying, accepting, and approving a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Sandusky and Ohio Charter Municipal Corporation and the Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council, the collective bargaining unit for certain employees of the Sandusky Police Department for the period January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2023, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Meinzer.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance or suspension of the rules in full accordance to Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. I know, Commissioners, we all received a red line of the agreement compared to the prior agreement, but I'm wondering if there is someone who's going to make an overall presentation to the commission and the city.
Oh, there he is.
Mr. Heil, I take it you're the one.
Yes. Through you, Commission President, what you have before you is the negotiated tentative agreement that we've reached with the FOP for the next 3 years. And first, I want to thank the FOP for their work with us on this. We had some very, very productive sessions, and they were good partners, and we're excited to present this agreement to you all. I'm just going to go over some highlights. First and foremost, there's a 3-year wage structure that we are, as a city, attempting to pattern across all of our unions, where there's a 2% increase next year, 2.5% increase the following year, and a 3% increase in the third year. One of the other big economic changes is that based on some of our discussion with our Chief Oliver and Assistant City Manager Orzak, and just seeing where we were in recruitment for police officers, one of the other big focuses of our negotiations was raising starting pay for our police officers, which you will see the new wage scale does so. So the starting hourly rate for police officers will now be $23.75, which we're hoping will make us yet again more competitive so we can hire great officers to join our force years to come. Additionally, there is a new health insurance article on the economic side of things. The health insurance costs we've learned for the city are staying consistent for the next year, so there's no change next year. But going forward, we've moved to a percentage-based or cost-sharing model with hopefully all of our unions, and the FOP agreed to it, where the costs of health insurance are broken down by a percentage as opposed to a flat dollar amount. And then there's also provisions in there that allow the unions to have are at the table with the city when we're designing the actual health insurance plans, so that we're all rowing in the same boat, trying to make sure that we're providing good benefits to our employees, but also containing costs for the city overall long term. Those are some of the economic highlights. There's also some other minor changes in there regarding funeral leave designations and other things that you see in all your red lines. But at this point, since I think that's the majority of what the commission was interested in, I'm happy to answer any more specific questions.
Thank you, Mr. Heil. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Meinzer.
One comment, one question. The comment is that I really like the fitness incentive that's built into the back end of the article. I'd like to see that across the board with all departments, and talking about healthcare and reduction of cost. That fitness criteria is a big deal. And actually, if I ever get reelected, I probably would increase it what they got. But the question is, I saw that the percentages for differential between ranks, this is probably going to have to go to Chief Oliver. The percentages of rank differentials, 10, 13, something like that, but it mentions senior patrol officer, it mentions sergeant, it mentions lieutenant, it mentions captain, and in the contract, I see no reference to captains. Are there captains no longer exist on the police department? Chief Oliver?
Chief?
Through you, Commission President, to Commissioner Meinzer, there are currently no captains on the roster, but that position is still available through the department. Our shift commanders are lieutenants.
Okay, thank you. And there's no assistant chief, is that correct?
There is not, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions or comments, Commissioners? Great work, Mr. Heil and Chief and others who were involved in the negotiations. This is classic interest-based bargaining, and the parties came together, and it wasn't adversarial. It was, this is what we need, this is what we need, and we got to an agreement, and I've got good feedback from the staff, Mr. Wobser in particular, Mr. Heil, more so about how the negotiations went, and it's much appreciated. Unless there are additional questions or comments, Commissioners? Oh, one last thought. I thought that was really important to get the bottom of the wage scale, the entry position, entry wage back up. I have one daughter who has a longtime boyfriend now who's the deputy sheriff with Erie County, and he did not come here because of the pay differential. That's just when there was opening there. It's another fine a law enforcement organization. But I know that the officers in Erie County do regard Sandusky Police Department as a wonderful place to work. And so I'm glad that we are raising that bottom pay level so that we continue to attract the quality officers that we have today. I think that's important. Ms. Myers, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted, and that completes our regular items of business, and we turn the report over to Mr. Wobser for his report.
Thank you, Commissioner Murray, commissioners, audience, and staff. Before I get to my traditional report, I just want to take a second to say thank you to Commissioner Twine for her leadership on the Sandusky City Commission. I remember just over 7.5 years ago when I was still interviewing for this position, meeting you at Ruby Tuesday, as we know we recently mentioned, and 7.5 years later, Ruby Tuesdays is gone, but we're still here for now. and I remember getting to know you in that conversation and just having such admiration for your leadership. You have been the steady, strong voice on this commission in times when it wasn't easy to do so. I know I get a voice tonight, and I want to also just say to thank you on behalf of our current Assistant City Manager and longtime Police Chief John Orzek, who I know you've worked so closely with on public safety issues over the last 8 years. In addition to that, there's not one major thing in HR that we did over the last 7.5 years that I've been here where you weren't the point person for the City Commission. And again, I'm inspired by your leadership. I value your voice, and the community has greatly benefited from that leadership. And I really look forward to seeing what's next for you as a public leader in this community. But thank you for taking a chance on me, and thank you for everything that you've done in your 2 terms for the city of Sandusky.
Take a bow, Commissioner Twine.
Get a little emotional, but so and I know there was something bigger planned for you tonight that we couldn't do because of the pandemic. So I'm sure we'll find some time to do that with the rest of the commission. But thanks again, and Commissioner Pajali, I just want to say welcome to you. I've also had a chance to work with you. I think I've known you even longer than I've known Commissioner Twine from your time with the county and my time in Cleveland.
Yes.
But I'm so excited by your election and the chance to get your expertise on the city commission. So with that, I will turn to the traditional report. First, a donation, another chance to say something nice about a commissioner. Commissioner Waddington has donated $300 this year through payroll deductions to the Sandusky Rec Department. He'd like the donation to be utilized for the upcoming winter break program. I'd like to thank him for his continued support of the Recreation Department and ask for a motion to accept that donation.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? Without objection, the motion be approved, and hearing no objection, motion is approved with our thanks to Mr. Waddington.
Moving on to administration. Both the Administrative Benefit Review Committee and the Finance Committee have recommended a 2% cost of living adjustment and a one-time bonus of $1,750 for current full-time, non-probationary, and non-bargaining employees as of December 7th, 2021. Full-time, non-bargaining employees did not receive a cost of living adjustment in 2021. The cost of living adjustment will be effective the first pay period of 2022, and a one-time bonus will be paid the last pay of 2021. Current probationary employees will receive the one-time bonus after successful completion of their probationary period. The next step is to have the City Commission approve this recommendation. I would ask you for a motion and support.
So moved.
Second.
On a motion and second, discussion. This is one we should have a roll call vote. Ms. Myers, would you poll the commission, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
That motion is approved.
I'd also like to request a motion to affirm the following persons who have been appointed to serve as volunteers on a respective board or commission. And I'm not sure, Brendan, if you want to make sure, do I read all of these and can I get one motion, or do we have to do them separately by committee or separately by individual?
So long as you state what commission each person is going to be appointed to, I don't have an issue with doing it all at once.
Okay.
However, if for some reason commission chooses not to appoint someone,
We'll pull them out.
yeah, that would be,
Okay. If you guys, as long as you guys are okay, I'll read it all. Then if you want to pull somebody out, you can.
That's fine, and that's the right answer, Mr. Heil. One of your predecessors, who was not long-lasting, insisted that we read each one. That was a while back.
I wish I didn't even have to read it. I could let you guys read it for a second and then there. So I'd like to request a motion to affirm the following persons. Bayfront Corridor Committee, David Miller, William Siemens, and Mike Zuloff to terms through 12/31/2024. The Economic Development Incentive Committee, Paul Crook, to a term also through 12/31/2024. The Erie Metropolitan Housing Authority Board, Jonathan Holliday, through 12/8/2026. Fire Prevention Code Board of Appeals, John Fike and Dan Fresh, through 12/31/24. Housing Appeals Board, Walt Matthews and Janice Warner, through 12/31/24. Income Tax Board of Review, Carrie May, through 12/31/23. Public Arts and Culture Commission, Chris Parthmore and Martha Weichel, through 12/31/24. And finally, Residential Building Code Board of Appeals, Roger Gunlock, through 12/31/24. I'd like to request a motion to approve those appointments.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Myers, would you poll the commissioners on the appointments and the approval of the motion?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
The motion is approved and the appointments are made, and it's with the commission's great thanks. And these folks donate their time, often at the end of a long day. Usually they meet in the evening. They are, in many ways, our ears and eyes of the city. They provide us with important input, and when it's necessary, they reach out to us and quietly, sometimes not so quietly, and they let us know what we need to know, and it's very much appreciated. And I think we are a much stronger city because we have such strong boards and commissions. Mr. Whoopser.
Well said. Moving on to the Finance Department, general reminder for property owners of vacant dwellings. If your dwelling is expected to remain vacant and unoccupied during the winter months, we highly recommend that you contact our office to turn off the water. This will help prevent your water lines from freezing and breaking, which would lead to costly repairs for the property owner. The customer accounting office number is 419-627-5893, and I do highly encourage people to do that. My winter is often spent talking to the finance director when people find me and ask me to turn over their high fees for this. So let's save all of ourselves that and make sure you turn it off now. Also, Public Works, we're excited to announce that the Perkins Avenue and Warren Street projects were awarded $487,500 each, totaling $975,000 from the Ohio Public Works Commission. In July, the city will receive these funds, which will be split as $650,000 in grant and $325,000 in interest-free loans. Both projects include sewer, water, and pedestrian improvements and are to be bid over the summer of 2022, with construction ending in 2023. Also, staff is looking for permission to submit a safety application to ODOT for additional sidewalk funding associated with Cleveland Road for up to $650,000. They were notified of the application a week ago, and it's due by the end of the month. A formal communication will be sent at the next commission meeting for permission to apply and accept if awarded. I'd ask for a motion to approve that application.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion? Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, the motion is approved.
Thank you. Also, a special thanks to the Streets and Traffic Division for successful completion of this year's leaf collection program. For any resident with additional leaves, the drop-off area near the Marquette Drive entrance to the City Service Center will remain open 7 days a week until January 21st. Leaves must be bagged in paper bags. Plans for the Meg Street Reconstruction project have been accepted by ODOT, and the project is expected to be bid in January or February, accompanied by an RFQ for inspection services. And finally, for Public Works, an update on the failed emergency generator at the wastewater treatment plant. Staff is working diligently to develop a set of bid documents for refurbishing of the existing unit. A project is anticipated to be brought to Commission for approval to bid in January in hopes of having the generator up and running by the middle of May, when the ultraviolet treatment system is required to be turned back on for the summer. And then just a few meeting updates for the Planning Department. Arts and Culture is scheduled for Tuesday, January 18th at 5:15. Landmarks is scheduled for Wednesday, January 19th at 5. Board of Zoning Appeals scheduled for Thursday, January 20th at 4:30. And Planning Commission is scheduled for Wednesday, December 22nd at 5 p.m. That concludes my remarks for this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions or take comments from the Commission.
Commissioners, questions or comments for the city manager?
Mr. Chairman,
Jolly.
I would just like to say on that Public Works project, I know the engineers should get a pat on the back for that because they came before Public Works a couple of times and were always eliminated for one reason or another, and it's glad to see that they figured out how to work around those challenges to get funded. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, we know you have a lot of tools in the toolbox that maybe can help us figure out how to work around them in the future as well. So we're
To have you as a member of the team.
It just depends on who's on the scoring committee.
Additional questions or comments for the city manager? I just shout out to the Streets and Traffic Division. You know, probably a lot of you have heard me say before, there are 4 seasons in city government: potholes, weeds, leaves, and ice and snow. And that's when we hear from our constituents about what we're doing wrong. I didn't hear anything about leaves this year. Did any of you?
No, it's good.
No, wonderful. Tip of the hat to those folks. They did great. Now, it was great that they didn't get, a foot of snow in between the first and second rounds. That helps too, and that aided us in a lot of years past. But I just wanted to say, offer our particular appreciation.
Absolutely.
Just additional questions or comments for the city manager?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
not for the city manager, but for Mrs. Twine. I wrote down a few comments this afternoon. I'm going to read them real quick. You always came game ready for all the meetings, and I always preach that. I think most of you know I'm in my 4th term now, and that always drove me nuts. We've had some in the past, didn't have a clue what we're talking about. Mr. Murray has spent some of them golden years with me in the past. You've always been passionate and consistent, and as far as I'm concerned, you will be missed. I'll still call you, though I know I drive you 366-0877.
Wow.
Yeah, you know mine. You know mine, I know that.
402-1437.
Yeah, all right.
We wrote them down one day.
Stuart, do we have a delay on this? Can you back that up a little bit?
I'm going to advise you to stop there, Mr. Waddington, before the police chief comes to see you about private information.
Thank you, though, Mrs. Twine. I really appreciate working with you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I do want to take a little bit of time. I hope I can get through this. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Eric. Congratulations, Steve. It has been a wonderful experience. I want to thank, first of all, the community of Sandusky for your support. When I first came on commission roughly 8 years ago, this was a new thing for me. Hadn't planned on running for any elected office if you'd have asked me a year before I ran for office, but this is my home. I've been blessed to be able to have a part in basically turning things around. Sandusky is still in my heart. I'm leaving with mixed emotions, but I am excited about, what I could be doing in the future. I'm sure to be some type of public service. Don't know if I'll ever run for an elected position ever again, but I've learned enough to know not to ever say never. I want to thank all of my commissioners that I've served with, and then especially Dick and Dennis. When I first came on, I was elected with them my first term as well as my second term, and they have been so supportive, so helpful. And I think I wrote an endorsement of them, and I talked about how they would listen to me. And I truly appreciate that. It is, again, this has just been amazing for me, and I really appreciate that. The city staff, I can't express enough the support that I've had from the city staff, the fact that they don't mind listening to me either. I really appreciate that, and I'll even say the media, the Register, has been very supportive too. And they, to be fair, they would ask some tough questions also. And so, again, I'm leaving with mixed emotions, but I am excited for what I've learned, being able to, again, help my community, my city, my fellow citizens. And Dave, you can call me anytime.
What hours?
But thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Meiser.
Naomi jumped in, or Ms. Twine jumped in and said her farewell address where we all got to praise you. So, I wasn't prepared, but Dave, stop calling me all the time, okay? I mean, at least between 4:30 in the morning and 6:30 in the morning.
4:30 is all right.
Yeah. I have to say that in 2011, if you asked me if I was gonna be on the city commission, I would have said, I don't even know if I want to live here anymore. And eventually, the five of you, the three of you come on, the five of you, you made some good hires. You made some great decisions. You've run the city professionally since I started watching, like, oh my goodness, this is what I've always wanted, Maybe it's time to get involved. So that you're one of the reasons I ran, and it was great to work with you. And you, we always had some good debates, and we have little differences and stuff, but it's been a pleasure, so thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Twine, I know that Mr. Brady is saddened by the fact that he can't be here, and he's equally saddened by the fact that you're leaving. They're moving on to something new. You're not leaving Sandusky, of course. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking about when I first met you, and we were campaigning together. You and I had not met before we were campaigning. And you know how it is, Mr. Waddington, when you're running with somebody at the same time, you look at them as a competitor to a certain extent. I mean, it's just the way it is. And I'm looking at this, who is this young Turk? And she's really smart. And so you didn't have a lot of name recognition, and I didn't really think you'd get the nod, although I really hoped you'd get the nod. I remember reaching out to you, and I kind of regret saying it then, but I did, and I'll fess up to it. And I said, if you don't get the nod the first time, I hope you run again. And this last time, she cleaned up all of us. So she did just a wonderful job. And you've been such a great resource, and you've been a great advisor to me. And you don't say a lot. You don't say too much. But when you've had something to say, I knew it was important to listen to what you had to say, and it was very insightful, and I'll miss that insight. You have an able successor in Mr. Bajali, but it's a different successor. And like Mr. Waddington, there will be times when I'm going to still call you for advice because sometimes I need it. And you very often said to me, quietly, especially when you were seated next to me for a good number of years, to say, Dennis, don't do that. You don't want to go that direction. It was always good advice, and we'll deeply miss you, personally and professionally.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, are there any items of old business? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Harris, pardon me.
So I'll keep this brief. I certainly can't say any more really than what the other commissioners have shared tonight. But first and foremost, I just want to say thank you. Oftentimes you've brought a sense of calm to this commission and have been a voice of reason and so much more. And kind of as Commissioner Murray had alluded to, you say very few words, but I must say that you certainly make them count. And it's just been amazing. I appreciate you just being a great role model and really an inspiration for me. So again, thank you for being you, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any items of old business? Any items of new business?
Chairman.
Mr. Waddington.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
I apologize to have to deal with the mundane, but I do need to set a public hearing for the CDBG fiscal year 2021 budget, and would appreciate a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion? Without objection, the motion to be approved, and hearing no objection, the motion is approved. Commissioners, Mr. Brady separately sent you a memorandum with various appointments, reappointments to other boards and commissions that are made by this body as opposed to some that are made by Mr. Woopser. Mr. Heil, or Ms. Myers, I'm not sure how best to present that motion. Can we vote on those folks who are in the memo, or do we need a more complete recitation of their names and positions?
Is this for additional appointments?
Yes.
To board? Yeah, I think, again, we should read their names and the positions into the record. And if there's any known objections, maybe pull those folks out for a separate vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Ms. Myers, apparently you're nodding that you've got this one and you're one step ahead of me. So would you proceed to list the folks and their the positions to which they're being reappointed?
Yes, Mr. Murray. Audit Finance Committee, Dan Moncher and Steve Tomasula through December 31st, 2024. CRA Housing Council, Rick Jeffrey and Michelle Reeder through December 31st, 2024. Board of Zoning Appeals, Walt Matthews through December 31st, 2024. CRA Housing Council, Yvonne Anderson through December 2024. Cemetery Board, Steve Toft and Harrison Smith through December 31st, 2024. Community Relations Commission, Valerie Cruz through December 31st, 2024. The Erie County Economic Development Representative, the Erie County Land Bank Representative, and the Erie County Development Council Representative, Jonathan Holliday. The Landmark Commission, Louis Schultz and Robert Troika through December 31st, 2024. The Planning Commission, Connor Whelan and Jade Castle through December 31st, 2024. The Public Arts and Culture Commission, Jordan Sternberg through December 31st, 2024. The Recreation Board, Larry Wren, Elizabeth Collins Fisk, Tom Shera, and Sean Coakley through December 31st, 2024. And the Sandusky Tree Commission, Jim Arthur through December 31st, 2024.
Commissioner, if someone care to make a motion to reappoint those folks to those various positions?
So moved.
Second. There's been a motion and second. Discussion? Ms. Myers, you poll the commissioners on the motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Those appointments are made, again, with our thanks for the important work that those folks do. Commissioners, any other items of new business? Simply want to close out the year by expressing my gratitude for the city staff who has worked so hard during a difficult year. This pandemic has been challenging, it's been hurtful, it's been isolating, It's caused depression among a lot of folks, and I don't think that we've really begun to measure the full extent of that, and yet they've been there to help our citizens every step of the way. The police officers and the firefighters in particular are exposed to much higher risk than the general population, dealing with people who are sick and not knowing what it is that's wrong with them, and our thanks for their valor and their continued bravery and service to our community. I look forward to what comes in 2022. Although we will be doing so without Ms. Twine, we will have Mr. Bajali now as our ally in the fight for Sandusky's future. We've made so much progress over the last 8 years. I look at the staff that we have. I don't get to look at all of them here because we can't get all into the room these days, but we have a mixture of great talent and experience and new excitement and energy. It's just a wonderful, capable team. We as commissioners are very, very part-time. We help to set the overall vision and direction for the city, but we can accomplish nothing on our own. We act as a body, not as individuals, and the only way we ever get anything done is through this incredible staff that we have, and we're very thankful for what they do. I think that we are going forward with probably the best staff the city has ever had. And really, Mr. Bajali is new to the table, but his long experience in government makes this commission going forward one of the most experienced in a long time. And so I feel good about our direction. I think that, as I told my father, just wait to see where we go next. And as Mr. Waddington said, wish everyone happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever it is that brings you joy and warmth together this time of year. I hope you receive that in abundance. And with that, if someone would care to make a motion to adjourn, we will stand adjourned.
So
Someone?
Second. Stand